Evening, all. Hope all are doing well. Yes. Cool. We are broadcasting and we are live. We'll start in just under a minute. You can see the subject matter as is customary. And we'll get into it and get out of the way. I'll make an announcement concerning last night in a moment. Hope all are doing well. All right, 9, and I do not dilly and dally. This is something people can watch back, and often people do. From what I see with comments and that type of thing. So let's roll forward, and people will join as they are able, as is also customary. We are broadcasting, if you're unfamiliar or brand new to these broadcasts, we're broadcasting simultaneously to YouTube and to Facebook. This will be uploaded automatically to YouTube. And so you will be able to see it there. It'll also be on my Facebook page for those who are linked to us there. Okay. Every once in a while, I'll do a show where I'll give a definition or some background information. And most people kind of figure they know what this word means, and you won't be too far off. But here's what Merriam and Webster's dictionary says how they define counseling: professional guidance of the individual by utilizing psychological methods, especially in collecting case history data using various techniques of the personal interview and testing interest and aptitudes. Okay, pretty kind of bit of a technical definition. And trust me, you can read a bunch of different sources, and it's going to give you variations of that. Here's another one that says the provision of assistance and guidance in resolving personal, social, or psychological problems and difficulties, especially by a professor. So it reworded the very definition that Merriam and Webster's dictionary gave, but basically said the same thing, reworded. Provision of assistance and guidance in resolving personal, social, and psychological problems. What is kind of interesting in that definition is the word resolve. Very interesting indeed. Because anyone in the business will tell you that is not necessarily a given. That's not necessarily the outcome. It is the desired outcome for sure, but it's not always what is achieved. It's not always what is achieved. So that being said, what I stated I would do is offer two different perspectives, or what I believe are two different types. Okay. Now, counsel, and I'm kind of overemphasizing CIL, it's COUNCIL, means this: an advisory, deliberate, deliberative or legislative body of people formally constituted and meeting regularly. A body of people elected to manage the affairs of a city, like a city council, on and on and on and on. But the key term is advisory. Now, two different words, council, and most people don't emphasize the manner in which we speak. But I'm doing that tonight for the sake of driving home my point. There's two different types of counsel, because technically you say the word the same, counsel. And most of us don't think about this. Not everybody needs counseling on either side, but indeed, most people probably need one of those two. Now, I'm just kind of let some of this sink in. Most of us need one of those two. So the first thing out the box when we're talking about considering counsel, which one are we talking about? SEL or CIL? Wow. You know me, I'm gonna come with it immediately. I'm not gonna let it drag out and you gotta try to figure it all out and all this kind of thing. I'm gonna come with it. And so we coming with it right away. So to me, right out the box, you gotta ask yourself, what are we talking about? Are we talking about you need counseling as in terms of advice, advisory? Or are you talking about counseling as in terms of mental, emotional, psychological, as we said, or as we read, excuse me, the definition? Because some people I have definitely needed counsel in terms of advice. In terms of advice, I'm not above it now. Certainly not above it now. But then there's also the reality of needing counsel in terms of mental, emotional, and I've never particularly needed it in this manner, but in terms of mental, emotional, psychological, even spiritual issues, spiritual biblical issues. So just right off the cuff, if you're kind of watching this back or watching this from a distance, as I know some people on Facebook will do, they don't come in so they can be seen as viewing. They just kind of, the way Facebook works now, you can just kind of roll up to it. If your volume's on, you can hear me, but you don't have to actually click on and be watching the broadcast in the sense of directly, which is fine. I don't make any bones about that. But let me be abundantly clear. There is a real difference, not just in the spelling of the word, but I believe even the spelling of the word is done. Now I can't get into the mind of those who put the words forth, but to me, the definitions are so startlingly different that I think we need to really think about when we say counseling. When you say somebody needs counseling, have you really thought about the fact that you could be referring to they simply mean okay. Whenever I do the Facebook thing, people message me when I'm going live. I go live pretty regularly, but it is what it is. Bless your hearts. So again, the question is, you say somebody needs counseling. Okay, cool. What are you talking about? What kind of counseling do they need? And how do you know? Which we'll get to at another point. How do you know? That's the first problem. I do believe that there are people who don't have psychological issues. They don't have psychological, social, emotional, even, if you will, religious or spiritual issues for which they would seek out a professional in so much as a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist or sociologist, for that matter. No. What they really need is some advice. They need some advice. They need some friendly, sound, or wise advice. And for that, yes, I'm a Christian. If you haven't figured that out yet, I would turn them to, and often do. That's the kind of counsel I have given now. Of course, my job, most of you, at least my current, soon to be old job, already made my official announcement. Is I offered counseling SEL in terms of mental health, and we'll finish up officially tomorrow on the last of my sessions, and we call them sessions, and on and on and on and on, and psychoanalysis and psycho therapy and all this kind of thing, which is really just conversation. Of course, psycho meaning mind, psyche actually mind. And so let me speak in terms of my ethnicity. It has been widely known, and for a good reason, because psychology was largely dominated by, in terms of those who offer the counseling piece, was often dominated by your WASP or white Anglo-Saxon Protestants or Europeans. Okay, and so African Americans had very little reason, stay with me, to trust that. I'm not saying every single quote unquote white American enslaved every single quote unquote black American. But the fact is, because of the checkered history of this nation, black folk have been leery of now. I know people who are African American in the business, doctors. So I mean, I'm not gonna call people's names. I know a couple of doctors and people with master's degrees, and they're licensed mental health practitioners and licensed, art social workers and on and on and on, and licensed counselors and I know many African Americans who have gotten into an industry and been in the industry for decades. But historically speaking, going back many years, going back a couple of generations, counseling in terms of psychological, social, emotional counseling was not something that African Americans ventured into. I'm setting you up for when we start talking about dangerous, because there was essentially a view of African Americans or black people that was such that we were less than human. I mean, let's just talk plain, that we were less than human, and as less than humans, that we were not capable. We lacked the capacity to understand Hume and all of the. I don't want to go through all. I get in that world and then I lose everybody. But that we were not able to understand hierarchy of needs. We were not able to understand, excuse me, Freud and etc. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I had a couple of more there. Well, obviously we've proven, and I'm sitting here with a bachelor's degree and will pursue a master's. And again, I know people have doctorate degrees in psychology and sociology and such, human services, etc. So right there, you have to understand there's a whole population of people, and I can't speak for Hispanics. If I have anybody who's Hispanic watching, please feel free to comment what you understand culturally speaking. So there's a cultural piece here, and the reason why is because, are we talking about counseling SEL or counseling CIL? Are we talking about receiving advice, or are we talking about receiving social, psychological, etc. Assistance or aid, and typically from a professional? Now, let me say this, and I say this very respectfully. I've obviously been a pastor a few different times, pastor of a congregation a few different times in my life. I'm currently not. I have been just recently, as of a little over a month ago, was associate pastor at Journey Church, as it is called. And the pastor made a comment that if you want to seek counseling, it make a difference, go to somebody like Pastor Gabe or like my wife. Now, by using his wife, who actually I think has a master's degree, I don't think she's referred to as a psychologist. I don't think that's the title. But she has a private practice and is licensed to give counsel. to give counsel, S-E-L, S-E-L. Now, here's why it's so interesting, because in giving counsel, S-E-L, there is often a giving of advice. Now, it's not referred to or called advice, right? These are things that are often recommended by a professional that the person they're giving SEL to, counseling to SEL, to put these things in practice. I do this with my clients. I'm talking clients. I don't just sit there and listen to them talk and we just talk. No, I give advice. However, the stark difference is they're not simply saying, hey, Gabe, I'm struggling with something. What do you think I should do? No, what is extraordinarily and strikingly different. Listen to me now before we get into how to choose and why it can be dangerous. What they're looking for from a counsel, S-E-L, counselor, S-E-L-O-R, S-E-L-O-R, is a person not merely to just give them advice, but a person who can talk through and help them to talk through some of the social, emotional, psychological, or mental issues. A counselor, S-E-L-O-R, whether it be pastoral counselor or a licensed mental health counselor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And nowadays they're so tailored. You're not just looking for the person to advise you. You're looking for a person to actually get underneath the thinking. There it is. That a counselor's job, S-E-L, I have to keep doing that, is to actually get underneath and get down to the thinking, to the substratum or foundation of your thinking, not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. I said a mouthful right there. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. See, the key to the difference, and then therefore understanding how to choose someone and not choose, and why to stay away from this and that and the other, is to understand that I would suspect most human beings, whether you're American or whatever, need a counsel, C-I-L, counsel, like advisors, a board of advisors. As a matter of fact, the scripture suggests that in the multitude of counsel, or in a multitude of counselors, which is not how it's spelled, a better translation might be in a multitude of advisors, there is safety. Now, when you read when you read the Old Testament, notice most kings had magi or wise men or counselors. They had advisors. I want to go to war, and I understand what we're dealing with Ukraine and Russia. I'm not talking about that, even though that's a prime example in our modern day, as Putin really is dismissed his counselors or advisors. See the difference? Some, however, I might as well use it. Some are suggesting, however, he might be suffering from a mental illness. He will be 70 years old this year. And I'm not saying his age is to suggest that automatically means that he's got a psychological issue. No, but as we get older, our minds occasionally slip. Trust me, I'm 48, and I can tell you I suffer from that from time to time. I do. It's just what it is. So what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is recognizing, are you with me? That first of all, we have to be clear what we mean by counsel. You may simply need advice. You don't need anyone who is skilled and trained to get underneath the very thinking. They're not there to just tell you, girl, leave him alone. Man, don't talk with her. You have financial counsel advisors, right? I actually have me an advisor, I'm happy to say. I don't know if she's watching, but how you doing if you're watching? I actually have me an advisor to help me. I'm an independent contractor. I've only been that, even though technically for a couple of years, but I'm moving into a different economic bracket and I'm asking financial advice. Now, that person's skill level, and again, I don't want to speak for them, but that person's skill level might afford them to do some of the activities of a SEL and get underneath the thinking of a person wanting to do something financially. But that's not why I asked them to be my financial advisor. Now I'm going to start using that word instead of the COUNCIL, so we're not confused. Hopefully we got the point now, so I can use advisor instead of counselor and counselor. So I need a economic advisor because there are many things, and yeah, I can Google, but to be able to put some things together, we're talking about taxes, and we're talking about Roth IRAs, and we're talking about, well, I ain't gonna get all my business, but we're talking about a host of things that that I have already asked this person to walk me through so that I can make the best advice, so that I can, with the best advice, make the best financial decisions. That's a advisor or a counselor, COUNCIL. I would venture to say that most people, if they're willing to be honest with themselves, need counsel or advice. We'll come back to that. Okay? Bookmark it. Bye. The one that most people, and I've already alluded to historically, in particular African Americans, struggle with is not the advisor, even though I could make a case that they struggle with dealing with that as well. But we'll get back to that. You bookmarked it, blah, blah, blah. I want to talk about the fact that not only African Americans, but many people struggle with the idea of seeking a counselor. Now I'm gonna use that word SEL exclusively in this way. Okay, why? One, I've already told you, hard to trust. History. Same thing with vaccinations and African Americans. Now, I've been vaccinated for all kind of stuff since I was born. And I'm vaccinated for COVID. We're not getting into that. But what I want you to understand, is that when we're talking about a counselor, I had a friend of mine, obviously not going to call any names, who was told by a group that he was working with. It's ironic because whether they knew it or not, let me use this, and if they're watching, they'll know. Don't tell them yourself, just listen. Don't turn me off. Stay with me, because I don't think they really thought about it. They were operating as his advisors, his counsel. They were operating as if they were a board of advisors. That's what they were doing. Now, some family members and some longtime friends or whatever acquaintances, and they felt like they were in a position to do so because of the position or relationship that they had with him. But what was ironic is that they were operating as advisors, advising him to go and seek counsel. Now, if you want me to, I could say they were operating as counselors, telling him to go get counselors. The reason why he had some pushback, and if he wants to, he can share, is because he knew that none of them were qualified as advisors to advise him in terms of getting counsel. Let me say that one again. That oftentimes when people are suggesting people need counseling, COUNSELING, what did I tell you? Essentially, their job is not just to listen to what you're going through, but their job is to get underneath that, at least the ones that I know to be good at it, to get underneath that and to get down to the root of your thinking. Another word for what you think and how you think is mentality. In other words, to unearth to take the psychological tools that they have been given and that they've been trained in to help you unearth your thinking, which is leading to the ideas and ultimately the justified actions, whether they are good or bad. I said a mouthful there. Let me slow it down. Any good counselor, pastoral, drug, whatever, their job, listen to me, if you want to go into this business, is not simply just to listen to you talk about, well, mama did this to me, my daddy said this, my daddy's gone, my mama's gone, my kids don't want to listen, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Not making fun of you. I get it. I get it. If they're going to be good COUNSELORs, their job ultimately is to get to the root of the problem, not merely to offer some bits of advice, some parables. Their job is to uncover and unearth the thinking, now you're gonna make me do this, the triggers, the antecedents. So you don't think I have an education? You think I'm just joking about going to Kaplan University online? Tell the people whom I own student loans to and ask them, and have to call them. Did Gabe go to school? Well, we see here that according to this money he owes us, he went to school. And that degree that I just turned into my new place of employment that says bachelor's in science, applied behavioral analysis, and that's psychology. So according to them, I do have a degree in psychology, and I didn't even realize this. I just told somebody, and I graduated cum laude. I didn't even know. You figure out what that means. But I'm here to tell you, in the years that I have been doing both giving people advice and digging down into the issues that they have been facing to help uncover and unearth the things that they're up against, the years, truth be told, I would be honest to say decades, I've been doing that. What I have come to discover is why people are so afraid of it. And justifiably so. I understand what that particular group of individuals was telling my dear brother and friend. I understand what they were trying to do. They felt like he had a social, psychological, emotional issue. See how specific I'm being? I want to help us now. So because from their position, they felt like he had a social, psychological, emotional issue. They believed as unrequested advisors. I'm just going to say it the way it is. He didn't ask them to be advisors, but they felt like as unsolicited advisors that they were in a position to assess him. Woo! I'm talking good. To assess, to do an assessment of him psychologically, emotionally, and therefore recommend that he seek counsel. And they stood in position to also tell him whether or not they thought the counselors or counsel that he sought was actually, according to them, unqualified to do so, that according to him, or to them, excuse me, whether or not those counselors, they were operating as advisors, telling him he needs a counselor, and yet also was under the impression that they would have to be the ones who would sign off on the skill and ability and intent and work of the counselor. And none of them seemed to understand why he put up resistance. So I am using him as an example. And he can speak if he wants to. I know he there. I know he like, amen. Amen. He might end up sharing this on his page. Love you, brother. The reality of it is, the reason why that situation ultimately goes down the way it is was not because of the suggestion that he didn't need counseling. In fact, what he told them is, I am getting counseling. What kind of counseling? COUNCIL? Yes. COUNSELING? Yes. Yes. I know his counselor. Know him very well. Known him for 48 years. In fact, the counseling he was receiving was not only advising, but was digging down into the psychological, emotional, historical. Oh man, that counselor went deep. That counselor went all down in his history. That counselor, if you know him and you're listening, don't get scared. But that counselor went down in his history. That counselor went down in his culture, religious background. That counselor got all down in the crevices of his situation and dealt with his mentality. And he communicated to those individuals that is exactly what his counselor was doing. And most of them kept suggesting that they felt like that was inadequate. But let me tell you, that's exactly what a good counselor does. But they didn't know that as advisors. They didn't know that. So, Gabe, then what is the dangerous thing? Because you said on the thing, there's some danger. Here's the danger. The danger lies just as much in the counselors or advisors as it does in the counselor, SELOR. Let me make my case. What is it that we are getting more often than not? The counseling or the advising? Well, let's be honest. Mamas and daddies give advice. Best friends give advice. Acquaintances give advice. Bosses give advice. You can get advice from all kinds of people who are not qualified. Oh, you didn't like me. I knew you wasn't going to like me. The scary thought is most people, because notice when I read the definition of counsel, yes, it talks about a board of advisors, but the fact is counsel or advice can come from people who are not qualified to tell you any manner of answer to what you are dealing with. Notice I said I have a financial advisor to help me with my finances. I know a lot of people who are good with money, but they are not equipped to be able to watch this now. Because here's what an advisor needs to be good at. Woo! I need to write books on this stuff. An advisor needs to be good at the art of articulation in terms of why something is a good idea. Not just it's a good idea because I'm your mama. It's a good idea because I'm your daddy. It's a good idea because I would never steer you wrong. I would never lie to you. Those reasons are garbage. And on that note, I don't mean any disrespect, but I've been doing this a long time. And if you're not fully prepared to stand by the advice you give and rise and fall with it, I know when I give people advice, they can come at me if it doesn't work. If they do what I advise them to do and it doesn't work, they have a right to come back to me and say, your advice did not work. And I'm not bragging, but I can tell you now, in over 20 years of doing this, I have yet to have one person come back and tell me. Now, maybe there was some it didn't work for, but if we talk long enough, I promise you, most of the time, I can uncover that they didn't do everything I told them to do. And because they didn't do everything I told them to do, they can't come at me and suggest that somehow I led them wrong. You got to do everything your advisor says. But if you're going to pick a good advisor, you have to pick someone who is ready and equipped and knowledgeable to be able to give you all the steps and all the instructions that you need to follow to find the success that you are after. Which is why I want to tell you one of the big dangers in seeking advice just because that's Big Mama, just because that's Big Daddy, just because that's the pastor. Oh, I said it. It doesn't mean because he's a pastor, he is sound in his advice. And let me just say this. If I got a pastor or an elder watching me, and your advice needs to come from the scripture. And if you haven't read Proverbs, pastors, dig into Proverbs, because guess what Proverbs essentially is? It is a book of advice. Proverbs is a book of advice. I know you didn't realize that, but wise sayings, pithy statements, proverbs, advice. Speak not into the ears of a fool, for they will despise your speaking. Advisors are able to point out pitfalls. They're able to not just say, this is what I think you ought to do, but they say, this is what I think you ought to do, and this is why I think you ought to do it. Not just this is what I think you ought to do, but this is why it is wise. There it is. The whole point of an advisor, ladies and gentlemen, or let me do it this way. Wisdom is the principal thing. And so in all of your pursuit, get an understanding. Why? Get that wisdom, and then get the understanding is how you use it. It's no what it is, and then why it is, and then the wisdom is how to use it. Sorry, kind of flipped around. So in my giving advice, and others that I trust to receive advice from, they don't just say, Gabe, this is I'm sitting back with my arms folded. This is what I think you want to do because I'm your big brother or because I'm your uncle, your cousin. I don't give a rip who you think you are. If you can't ground your advice in some sound wisdom, yes, I'm going to say the word because I'm grown and living in my own house. Shut up talking to me. And let me just share a word to those of you who love telling people what to do. Would you please stop? You throwing around opinions all day long, and because you big, bad, and bold, and you think somebody is subservient or somebody is dumber than you or whatever you got going on, you just throwing around advice. Yes, you might have been a great mom to your children, an excellent dad, but it doesn't make you a good advisor. Oh, let me get in more trouble. Just because you're older doesn't make you a good advisor. Just because you raise children and your children are as old as I am doesn't make you a good advisor. It doesn't make you a good advisor just because you're old. Age does not automatically mean wisdom. Imagine, some of you probably be like, yeah, Gabe, makes sense. I have given advice to men and women older than me. For years, most of my cotton picking life, I have advised, I have given words of wisdom and insight on directions to take to people older than me all my life. And obviously you can see I'm doing a subject on this. I take it very serious. I pull no punches. I love you, but I'm not pulling no punches with anybody about anything because I realize that what I'm saying to you is so serious that if it doesn't work out, it could mean life or death. It could mean making a financial decision or otherwise that is so traumatic and so bad that it could cost you everything. And life is so jacked up, of course, that could happen anyway, but understand, I am very particular in how I word, looking at what I'm doing now, and how I say what I say. So I don't advise many people to be advisors. I don't care if you're 80 years old. God bless you, ma'am, sir. You live to be 80. It doesn't mean that you can give sound advice. Now, I don't want to get into particulars because I just know if I do that, I'm going to offend somebody. Just contact me if you want to get into specifics. I'm not going to do that now because I just know. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that without doing it. So when it comes, let me finish up advisors because I'm almost done. So when it comes to advisors, COUNCIL, now notice in the definition of council, and I'm doing that on purpose, council, CIL, it talks about a group. Here's a bit of wisdom. In the multitude of advisors, there is safety. Now, that's not always a given, but I'm just giving you a proverbial bit of wisdom here. It is, what did they say? What did they say? Get 2 or 3 opinions Now, the word opinion, be careful there. Of course, that's a professional opinion, usually when I use that phrase. Excuse me. But I don't ever give anybody advice in a manner to suggest I'm the only one who could possibly understand what they're up against. Therefore, do what I say, nobody else ever. Now, you can ask, I got so many people on Facebook, and obviously I'm not going to call any names, who I have given advice to, and they can tell you. So just get on there on my page. Has anyone ever received advice from Gabe? And what's the results? And I suspect somebody will respond. But my track record, I'll be honest, it's pretty good. Not perfect, but I'm doing pretty well. My percentages is pretty high. Why? I come out of a family of people who do it. I'm just being honest. I come out of a family of people doing it. I'm careful with what I'm about to say, but I've been gifted to do it. And I know some people understand what that means. I've been gifted to do it. I've gone to school and learned some of the more technical pieces and aspects of advice. I've even considered, from a standpoint of employment, this was years ago, about being a business advisor and helping people to navigate the business world. I didn't go into it any deeper. As a matter of fact, I am now a housing specialist. What do you think part of my job is going to be? Giving people advice on housing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I do. Now remember, this is Gabe's view. Gabe, you don't ever talk about yourself this much. You're right. But tonight, since I called it Gabe's view, kind of compels me to talk about me a little bit. Trust me, this is a little. So the reality of it is, so the first thing is advice. And I'm telling you now, when it comes to advice, you have to be really, really careful who you are getting advice from. Let me say this. Another thing you have to be careful of when it comes to advice. When it comes to advice is, at times what you have is, let's say you're getting advice from Big Mama, right? One of your cousins said, girl, I went to Big Mama. Big Mama helped me. Okay, so you go to Big Mama, Medea, whatever you want to call it. You go to Medea, you go to Big Mama. Now that's Black culture, but most people understand what I mean. You go to the matriarch in the family. Does that help? Is that better? To the oldest woman in the family. And you've been told everybody goes to her, men and women, all the cousins go to her. Watch this now. And you go to her and she gives you advice and you walk away confused, befuddled, and you can't figure out why in the world anybody sent you to her. Let me give you advice on how to deal with that. And I'm just be general because I get the sneaky suspicion somebody's gone through that. Ready? Here you go. Take a minute, since you've already done it, and if you haven't done it, please hear me. Take a minute to ask yourself, for all the people who recommended that you go to Big Mama or Big Papa or the matriarch in the family, good evening to you. How is their lives going? I'm not trying. How are things going for them? In other words, yeah, they got advice from Big Mama. Yeah, they got advice from Big Papa. Yeah, they got advice from Pastor so-and-so, Bishop so-and-so, Elder so-and-so. They got advice from this priest or even this business advisor or whatever. But let me ask you again, how are things going for them? Now, if they got the advice 2 days ago, you might want to wait a little bit and see if that advice plays out over time. Ooh, girl, I got that advice from Big Mama, and man, it's already working. Well, how long have you been using it? 2 days. Don't you think we ought to wait? Don't you think you ought to wait a little longer before you just decide that the advice is working? Don't you think? You might want to wait a minute, because who's to say that advice is going to work out? Here's another one. I'm gonna move off that one because I know that's tough for people. Because you just think Big Mama will never lie. Yeah, it don't mean that she wouldn't lie. I'm not saying she would lie, but what if she doesn't have the wisdom of her years? See, you're assuming that because she's 70 and 80 and 90, that she is automatically wise? What if she's suffering from Alzheimer's? What if she's suffering from dementia? And you're going and you don't know it yet. She hasn't been diagnosed. And you're sitting there talking and she's talking off the wall, but that's Big Mama. So you're trying to do what Big Mama said, or you're trying to do what Big Papa said, and you don't realize Big Papa got some psychological issues, and they need counseling. Counseling. I'll get back to that in a minute. Let me work this advice thing for a minute. So first of all, if you come and say, Gabe, I got advice from so and so, I don't mean no disrespect, but I need some track record. I need to take a look at what's going on. Who have they advised, and how has it turned out? Delicious. Water, delicious. I don't mean no disrespect, but if this is the kind of advice I'm going to use to move my family, me and my son, to make life decisions, I love Big Mama. I love Big Papa. I love all my aunties and uncles. I love them. But I'm not going to half of them to tell me nothing. And it ain't, if you want to call me arrogant, call me that. If you want to call me foolhardy, call me that. If I want to screw my life up, I'm going to screw my life up. I ain't going to somebody whose track record of advice has been terrible. Excuse me. I'm just not going to do it. Because I can't go to them and and extract from them a remedy to fix my situation. So excuse me if I'd rather just go on my own. And some of you have done that, and I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you, stop. I know everybody else go to them, but look at their lives. And I don't mean be cruel. I mean sit back and really look. Okay, now her life jacked up, and he ain't been right since 1983. And who you get advice from? I got advice from Big Mama girl. It's free too. It's free. Yeah, it need to be free. As a matter of fact, Big Mama need to pay us for taking her advice. So you got to vet that thing. You got to look at that thing. Now I'm giving you some wisdom here. You got to look at that thing. And not every older person is able to give sound advice. Now, here's another thing to look at. How did their lives turn out? If they're 70, 80, 90 years old and they living off people and they didn't save a dime and they made bad decisions and you can see it even in their old age, what would you be going to them for? What would you be going to them for? My financial counselor, my financial advisor is a person who, and now be careful. I'm not saying you judge everything coming out of their mouth strictly by where they are or where they're not, because there's some extraordinarily intelligent, bright people who can be a benefit to you, but they hit some bad luck. And I've had extensive conversations with my financial advisor, and that is the case. But a brilliant woman, yeah, I said woman, a brilliant woman who is, dare I say, gifted in terms of helping people financially. And she's probably blushing, but she'll be all right. I'm just telling you what I've learned in talking to her for years. And trust me, now that I got $2, we're going to figure out what to do with those $2 and make that work. We're going to put our head together and we're going to come up with a plan. Another thing when it comes to advisors, I'm going to get back to the counselor. When it comes to advisors, listen to me now. Here's the thing. You are ultimately responsible for the advice you receive. So even though I have a financial advisor, as I move into this new phase in my life, I don't want to make bad decisions. The fact is, it's still up to me when it comes to advisors. So now let me cut a Big Mama, Grandma, the matriarch in the family a break. Because she can tell you, girl, I wouldn't marry that man. Ooh, I don't like him. But she don't know him like you do. So you're going to have to weigh her advice by how well yeah, but mama's intuition. Now, y'all go with mama's intuition if you want to. That's your business. I'm not here to say for or against. I'm just telling you, you go with mama's intuition or you don't. Your business. Your business. Mama's intuition ain't never brought me nothing, and I love my mother dearly. Raised me well. I can raise my son because of her. But mama's intuition, I have never turned to. I've never turned to my mom for intuition. I look at sound things. No disrespect. I need to look at some information. I need to weigh these things by things that I can weigh them against. And mom simply having a feeling, no, mom, after you get through with your feeling, let me go and put my foot all the way in my mouth. Once you're done with your feeling, give me some concrete stuff. Give me some history. Be transparent. Tell me what happened to you. Give me something. Don't just say, I just feel, baby. I just feel, baby. I don't know what. I just feel, baby. I just feel. That's all I do. I'm just feeling. Well, mom, after all these years, you haven't figured out how to turn those feelings into concrete sound advice? All you got is a feeling? I'm sorry, I can't live by a feeling because whose feeling? Well, when you die, mama, if I'm living by your feeling, what am I going to do when you die? See, y'all got to think some stuff through. I know you love your mamas, and Gabe, she'll never steer me wrong. Unless her name is Jesus Christ, stop that stuff. Stop it. She ain't Jesus. She ain't God. She can steer you wrong. And she's been wrong, but you just don't want to admit it because you think you're going to offend Big Mama's memory if you tell the truth. That there were some things that she was wrong on. Oh, yeah, you know me. I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid. Come on with it. Come on with it. There are trained people who give advice, and they are careful to let you know if they're worth their grain of salt. That look, there's many different options here that you can choose. These are the things that I recommend. Don't that make more sense? I don't mean no disrespect, but that makes sense to me. You're saying that I have two or three different options, and these are the ways that I can go, and I know my situation, and I have some inkling now. Now I'm better informed on the decisions that I need to make. Mama's instincts is only going to get you so far. It might catch a bad boyfriend or a bad girlfriend every once in a blue moon. But trust me, I know some mothers, some grandmothers, some great grandmothers who will tell you, baby, I was wrong about this one. I was wrong about this one. I just felt like he was shady, baby. I just felt like she was a gold digger, and I'm glad she proved me wrong. I'm glad she proved me wrong. We need information. We don't need to be passing down feelings. We need to pass down information. My son needs me to teach him how to read situations, circumstances, watch this, and people. Oh, I could go deep with this. Y'all don't realize this is my subject right here. Other than the stuff in the Bible, which I love too, I can go deep. I go hours on this. You know what you really want? Somebody who has a skill at reading. And when I mean reading, I mean interpreting body language, a person who has a skill in interpreting written communication, a person who has the ability to interpret verbal communication. Here's a proverb: be weary of when men speak well of you. I do believe that's Jesus. I do believe that's Jesus who said that. So when people are always complimenting you, be cautious because there may be an agenda behind all those compliments. Get on to what you want. Okay, I'm cute. Thank you. I'm handsome. I appreciate it. I'm attractive. You're right. Appreciate you. My parents are nice looking. That probably does explain it. What you want? What you want? What you want? Well, what you mean? I'm just giving you a compliment. Yeah, you give me a compliment every 5 seconds. Now get to what you want. Well, I ain't gonna want nothing. Well, then shut up. Because there's only so many compliments you can give. And half these kind of jokers can't give no compliment beyond you pretty, you beautiful, you pretty. You got anything else? You gorgeous? I'll try something new. Let me move on because this ain't about relationships. Now, counselor, counselor. What did I say? A counselor's ultimate goal is to do? To help you by unearthing your thinking. They used to say when I was young, stinking thinking. So a good counselor, not advisor, a good counselor will help you unearth your thinking. Because as they listen to you and take mental notes, I don't take written notes, I take mental notes. As they listen to you, they begin to realize the gaps in your thinking. Now, we've talked about the danger in advisors. Let me talk about the danger with counselors. The dangers with counselors is potentially, I should say, is they're not in it for you to win it. Somebody should type that in. That's write that down. Put that on a t-shirt. You need a counselor who will go deep with you. You need a counselor who, let's just say it the way it really is, who will get dirty, get their hands dirty. They won't just make a lot of surface statements. They will get their hands dirty. Advisors, they give you basically baseline responses. That's all they need to give you because it's up to you ultimately where you're going to go. But you need a if you're talking about a counselor, you need somebody who is willing to unearth some stuff, somebody who will come alongside you, whether it's an hour session a week or whatever, or somebody who will sit there for hours, as I've done many, many times, and talk for hours. I talk with a friend 9 hours. 9. There have been 7-hour conversations, 5-hour conversations. Gabe, whoo, that's too much. No, it's not. A good counselor is not just knowledgeable, but they are willing to go as deep as the rabbit hole goes to help you pull out all that needs to be pulled out of you, pulled out of you, pulled out of you, pulled out of this heart, pulled out of this. And when I say this heart, I mean pulled out emotionally. That counselor is prepared to sit there while you cry until your eyes are straight up red. They'll hand you a box of Kleenex and keep working, and keep working, and keep working, and keep working. See you next week. See you next week. Come on back. Come on back. It's not about them fixing you. Don't get it confused. Don't get it twisted. Neither one of them is about, and that's another problem. That's another danger. You got ones that don't want to go deep enough, and then on the other hand, you got those who thinks they are Mr. Fix-It. There is no Mr. Fix-It psychologically. There is no Mr. Fix-It emotionally. There is no Mr. Fix-It when it comes to the very issues of our lives. There is no quick fixes. That's why they have to be willing to go all the way with you. Now, they may themselves have a limit, and I respect that. I'm not saying that because they have a limit that they're not good counselors, because every good counselor has to know his or her limit. Every good counselor has to know his or her limit. And trust me, I have a limit. I don't know what it is. I'll be honest, I don't know what it is yet. I don't think I've touched it yet. I'm sure it's in there. But every good counselor has a limit, but they are willing to go to their limit. I can hear Boys to Men. To the limit, I will go. Now that song is, the lyrics is different, but that I just heard that lyric right there. You need a counselor when you're talking about psychological, when you're talking about emotional issues. You need a counselor who is going to understand that all those issues are covered over by culture. Write this down. Culture, history, family dynamics. Are you the mother? Are you the father? Are you a son, a daughter? Are you a mother, father, son? All that stuff covers over the emotional and psychological. Woo! Goodness gracious. I might have to do a part 2 on this one. So listen to me, for those who want to go into the counseling business, you may unearth some abuse that happened 20 years ago. You wasn't trying to do that, but as you began to unearth some of the mentality, remember what I said, some of the ways of thinking, you began to unearth that part of their issue is cultural thinking. To my dear brother and my friend, we began to talk about it, and we both grew up in the same religious organization, and we discovered that some of his issues had nothing to do with his mama, had nothing to do with his daddy, had nothing to do with the people who were advising him. Some of the stuff was connected to the denomination that he grew up and I grew up in. And so when we unearthed that, I ain't gonna tell you obviously who he is, but we had to talk about that stuff. And I mean for a while. Because we began to see, watch this again, the holes, the disconnect. Am I losing you? What a good counselor is got to be able to do is allow for those holes, those gaps in the thinking. You've got to be able to uncover them, got to be able to unearth them, and not be judgmental, but got to be able to unearth it and see the holes and see the gaps. And then when those holes and those gaps are revealed, that counselor may have to point to the fact that mom was the one who who was the cause of that breach. That dad might have been the cause of that breach. That your religious background might be the cause of that breach. That your brother, that your sister, that your spouse might be the cause of that breach. And of course, you know who ultimately, you and I, might be the cause of our own breaches. It might be cultural. It might be historical. It might be ethnic. Watch this. It might be sexual orientation. Many of my homosexual and lesbian brothers and sisters, yeah, I said it, my lesbian brothers and sisters have gaps in their thinking. They have gaps, just like we all do. And because of those gaps, they add in. See, I ain't gonna get into a counseling session. I'm almost tempted, but because they have gaps, and the older they get with those gaps, you know what we do with our gaps? We become defensive. We become defensive with our gaps, and we start covering it over. Gabe, how do we cover it over? You're gonna make me do it. We cover it over with this. We cover it over with this. We cover it over with this. We cover it over by swiping that card. And what do we call that? Retail therapy? That's a very funny way of saying I'm bad with money. That's a very, very, very clever way and a sad way of admitting that you're bad with money. Yeah, you know, I got to get some, I don't need to buy no more shoes, but I need some retail therapy. I don't need to buy this Maserati. You know, I'm just going through, honey, I'm just going through. I'm going to go buy this Ferrari. Honey, we can't afford no Ferrari. I'm just going through on my job, baby. Let me do this. Let me go buy this F-150. You already got a truck. I need a new truck because I'm going through some issues at work. No, what you need is to call somebody like Gabe or Doctor, and I got 2 or 3 on my page that I know of off my head, who are in the business. Who are in the business. So understand, that's what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I'm all in that, man. Yeah, I'm in that. I'm all in there. I'm stepping on the traps. I want them things to try to get me. You ain't gonna get me. I'm too quick. I'm not on my feet. I'm not on my feet tonight. So when it comes to counseling in terms of digging down into the mental, psychological, if you will, into the emotional scars and tissues, this person, now watch this. Here's another thing. I'm gonna go a little deeper. I'm gonna get it all in tonight. This person has also got to be able to, ready? This person has also got to have some emotional, mental band-aids, even some spiritual band-aids. Some of them, they got to have some gauze because some of us have been through so much trauma. They've got to have some mental, emotional gauze and some tape, and they got to tape us up. They got to be able to do some mental and emotional stitching of those breaches. Now, this is where you start seeing some of the advisory stuff. When they start giving you advice, Now, here's where everything I've already said about advice, see where I started there? Now you got to be careful because this person may be able to unearth. I know counselors who are just tremendous at unearthing stuff, but they don't know what to do with the dirt. They get you all exposed, and then they be like, oh, you be like, okay, and then you're like, that's it. They leave you hanging, which is why I typically recommend professionals. Because there may be somebody, you got a cousin who is just really good. When you talk to them, woo, you be crying. You be crying, you be telling your problems, you be, and then when you say, what do you think I should do? Girl, I don't know. I got issues too. What? They unearth all this garbage and trash and brokenness, broken bottles. They got emotional broken bottles, and they got all kind of debris spread all over there from hurricane, schizophrenia, and all this bipolar, tropical storms blew through their lives. They got all kind of stuff. They need some bandaging. They need some water bottles, some emotional water. They need some. I hate to say FEMA because FEMA ain't always on it, but they need somebody to come in and give them the things that they need now to be repaired. You've done all this deconstructing, and now you need some reconstructing. Gabe, are you suggesting that I should only get counseling from people who are intelligent? Yeah, yeah, yeah. People who got experience, not just in helping you uncover all your business. Yeah, gorilla tape for sure. But you need people who not just know how to tell you what I think you ought to do. No, you need people who not only know how to unearth some stuff, but know how to help you to begin to mend some stuff. People who have the wherewithal and the experience and the intellectual educational background to be able to help you to repair the breaches. And this is probably the greatest danger in the counseling area. So many of us will go and get counseling from Big Mama because culturally, that's what we see everybody else doing. So that's what we do. Let me say something to you that's going to hurt your feelings, but I say it out of love. If Big Mama raised 8 children, and in raising 8 children, 7 of those children, drug addicts, 7 of those children got some kind of alcoholistic issues. They got some drug addictions. They've got some doing some other stuff. I don't want to. They're financially screwed up. I don't recommend, and I'm saying this as lovingly as I can. Please receive it in the way that I mean it. If you know that Big Mama raised her children and half of them can't even scrape up $10, you helping your uncles, you helping your aunties, you helping Big Mama's children. Why are you going to Big Mama? For counseling or advice? Why are you going to Big Papa? If you want to go to a pastor for advice and you look over at him and what he's doing and you see his family is falling apart, I hear Fred saying, falling apart and tearing at the seams, tribulation lends a hand, squeezes all your hopes and dreams. If that pastor's life is barely held together by Scotch tape, not Gorilla tape, Scotch tape, no disrespect, you may consider him to be a wonderful, wonderful preacher. He may teach the scriptures and your hair stand up on your body. You just, woo, teach it, man, teach it. But when it comes to asking him marital advice and his wife got a sourpuss look on her face every time you see her, no disrespect to the man. They've been married for 40 years and she ain't been happy but for 2 years. Do not go to that man to get a drop of advice from that man. But if you just insist on getting advice from that man, you need to hear things like, let me tell you the struggles in my own. Now, he may not get into personal stuff, But you need him to be transparent if you're going to be comfortable with him, especially if you're a woman and he's a man. You're a woman who's single, trying to get advice from him as your pastor about the kind of man or the kind of relationship you're looking for. And this dude's marriage is toe up and everybody in the city know it. I really got to ask you, what on God's green earth is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why are you doing that? Well, Gabe, what about you? You've been divorced 3 times. You're right. You're right. So do you think I go out and make every effort to try to give marital advice or counseling? No, I do not. It finds me. I don't seek it. It finds me. Now, thankfully, people who listen to me, it worked. But let me tell you, and I'm transparent. I told you, when it comes to marriage, I'll tell you right up front. Now, first of all, I've been divorced multiple times. I'll tell you point blank. I've been divorced multiple times. I will say this on the flip side, I'm probably more interested in saving marriages than the average married person. What do you mean, Gabe? I've been broken through divorce. I know what it feels like. Don't you think I want to try to save people's marriages? Yeah, because I know the feeling of the brokenness and the grieving that you go through when you go through a divorce. Especially my last one. Well, the ending of that relationship was brutal. And I'm not here to slam anybody. It was brutal. I had a child involved. It was rough. It was rough. Now, I'm not going to get into any more personal stuff. If you want that kind of advice from me, or you want to check me out and see if you think I'm worthy enough to give you counseling or advice, contact me. I'll talk with you. And if you feel like I'm not worthy, go. Because you're not paying me. I don't charge. Now, on my job, they pay me. That's different. They pay me to give mental health counseling. They pay me. But I do this for free. But let me be clear. You need somebody who will go deep, who will go deep, who will go deep with you. And as they're going deep with you, they're going to stay with you. They're going to hold your proverbial hand. They're going to walk through that dark cloud. They're going to come out on the other end with you. And they're going to cheer you on. They're going to applaud you. And along the way, they're going to give you wisdom. Along the way, here's the thing. They're going to help you to understand what's being unearthed. They're going to sweep away the dirt. They're going to move the dirt away so that you can see clearly. They're going to help you. They're going to pour some water and rinse it out. And they're going to get that tool if they need to. Sometimes you need one of them counselors who won't get out a nice little soft brush. No, a little toothbrush. No, they get out a chisel. I've been chiseled by some really, really good counseling. Woo, a chisel. Great. A sandpaper. Oh my goodness, I wish I could tell you. I'm over my time. If you want a good counselor, if you go to counseling services, not every one of those people in the counseling services is created equal. I say this respectfully to all, and they know because I'll tell them in a minute. I wish I could say their names, but I didn't get permission, so I'm not going to do it. But I got a couple of them that are doctors and they are counselors. I've never received counseling from them, so I can't speak for what they do. But let me just say this. If that counselor is not equipped and prepared to walk through dark tunnels with you, and with you don't mean come to your house and no, I'm not saying no. What I mean is in the psychotherapy, in the counseling sessions, willing to ask you very tough questions, willing to put your feet to the fire over some things that you're doing, willing to call you on your mess and love you in the midst of it. That's what I'm talking about. You need people who will call you on your mess and love you while they're doing it. You need that. I know this is COVID, so let me be careful, but you need that counselor who is not going to be so scared of hearing something that they might not want to hear, that they just ask you real light surface questions, and then they kind of send you on your way, and you pay that $125 an hour, $200 an hour, and you walk on out their office. No, you need somebody like Gabe. Gabe ain't the only one. I like Gabe, who will, for no money at all, who will walk in them dark tunnels and give you that box of Kleenex, as I told you before, and got a whole wall of Kleenex. Well, I'm so sorry using your Kleenex, and they just coming out off under the couch, and they just handing you Kleenex. Girl, I got a whole, me and Walmart got a contract for Kleenex. You good? Go ahead. I got some toilet paper in there. I got some paper towel. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, I'm good. So that's what you need. So Gabe, will you help? Yes. If you want some advice directly, then contact me. Sometimes over the phone ain't the best. It ain't the best way. Sometimes you can do video chat. Sometimes you need somebody physically in front of you. I get it. And by the way, let me just say this. If you have medical coverage that has a proviso for counseling, you know what I recommend you do? Use it. Oh, Gabe, I'm good. Everything is good. Listen to me. If your medical coverage will cover counseling sessions, and you know you got some stuff from childhood, and you know you got some stuff from a bad marriage, or your kids was mistreating you and doing all kind of stuff to you, or you got fired from a job and you realize, yeah, you got another job, but you haven't quite overcome yet. Don't be so stuck up that you can't use that provision and get that counseling. Because trust me if I tell you this, if I had some medical coverage that allowed me to do it, I would go right now. Well, not now. It's 10 o'clock at night. But I would set me up a couple of sessions, if nothing else, once a month, just to go and fine tune my mental health. Yeah, I said it. You know why? Because as I get older and as I work this job in the mental health field, I know I'm coming to the end. Tomorrow's Saturday, technically, is officially my last day. But in the few months I've done it, and yes, in the years technically that I've done it, I've come to put a premium on that kind of health. That kind of health. We talked about 2 types of counsel. I'm not going to go back through it because I'm over my time, 16 minutes. Watch the video again. Please share this stuff out. Get it out to as many people as you can. You see the information scrolling. If you would like to do anything, yes, I am officially, as of yesterday, gainfully employed. I don't ask anybody. I don't demand anybody to pay me for what I do. I do it because I love you. But if you feel compelled to do something because these things that we do on Thursday are helping you, then take the information, use it, and in advance, thank you. So many of you have done it, and I'm so grateful. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. We let me say this. We give to what we value. That's all I'll say. We give to what we value. So if you value this, give to it. If you don't give. Love you. See you next week. If you have a topic, now this topic, by the way, is courtesy of our own Joy Laverne, who follows me on Facebook, I think on YouTube as well. Thank you, Miss Laverne. By the way, exceptional tax person. I highly recommend that you feel of her. This is tax season. Contact her. You can find her on YouTube. On Facebook, Joy Laverne. Contact her. I've sent her information to family and friends and telling them to contact her. And if they don't, that's their fault. So yeah, I said it. Excellent, very professional. As a matter of fact, she's my financial advisor. Very professional. She's going to help me get my finances together. Because trust me, I need help. You know me, I don't sugarcoat nothing. I need help. So shout out to her. She don't mind me saying it, other than the fact she's probably blushing. But she don't mind me saying it. And look, I know some people in other fields. I'm not going to do that to them. They are excellent people. They are wonderful people. If I felt like you could use their services, I'd have to check with them, of course. But I would get you connected with them to be able to get the kind of advice you need. So that being said, look, I'm here. Messenger. If you follow me on YouTube, leave a comment. come actually find me on this video once I post it. So then that way we can hook up and I can try to see what I can do for you. All I can do is offer. I've been offering for over a year in these broadcasts. If you take it, you take it. If you don't, you don't. Again, love you. Till next week.